to the GenX Remix, Midlife, Laughs, and Next Acts, the podcast for bold Gen X women who are done playing small and are ready to build a business or career that lights you up. I'm your host, Tabitha Jones, your corporate escape Sherpa and career advancement and leadership coach. Before we dive in, I just want to give a quick reminder about my upcoming workshop, Escape with Clarity. Confidence, purpose, and action for your bold next act. It's my 2-session workshop series for Gen X women who are ready to stop spinning and finally get serious about building your next chapter with clarity, courage, and a step-by-step plan. You'll find the link in the show notes, so be sure to grab your spot. Now, today's guest is someone who lives and breathes the midlife remix. Esther Avant is a health industry veteran with over 20 years of experience guiding people toward their goals, not just in wellness, but in life. She's the co-owner of Made by Me Coaching, host of To Your Health podcast, and a best-selling author of To Your Health, a lifestyle of health, happiness, and confidence. Through her coaching programs and powerful voice, Esther helps people treat their health as a foundation of a fulfilling life and career. In this episode, we're going to talk about some health habits and how they can refuel your reinvention. We're going to talk about how to navigate discomfort and why success is about so much more than money. If you're in a career or identity transition, or just craving more energy and joy in this season of life, you're going to love this one. So let's jump in. Esther, hello, and thanks for joining us on the Gen X Remix. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I am excited to have you here. And I think back to some of my guests I've met in the past, and I think back to how we met, and it was through LinkedIn. And the reason I love to point that out is because so many people are going, what do you mean you just reach out to somebody on LinkedIn? I'm like, that is how we start making friends as adults. That's how it happens. Yeah. LinkedIn, Nextdoor, Facebook, wherever you find someone with something in common. And I felt just so drawn to your energy. And I'm super excited that we get to bring that to the show today.
Thank you. And likewise, it's fun to remember because even having had successes, sometimes you forget and you still feel awkward. So this is one that I recall and remind myself, like, well, you can meet cool people that you genuinely like. It's not just for, networking purposes. It's, that you really kind of vibe with. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're going to dive into my very favorite question. And that is, what is your remix story, Esther?
I love that question. I think I am sort of in the midst of the remix right now. I have, for my entire adult career, worked in the fitness and health industry and still do. But the majority of that was either at in-person gyms or fitness centers, rec centers in fitness specific things, or running my own coaching business where my primary job was hosting one-on-one and group coaching calls. And in the last couple of years, I've started transitioning to writing and speaking more. And I think it sort of came partly as just wanting more of a challenge, sort of feeling like I had done so much coaching that it wasn't as stimulating as it had been. It feels like because so many of the challenges are universal that people face, it just felt like I was kind of saying the same thing over and over again all day, every day. So getting into writing and publishing my first book felt like kind of the beginning of the remix. And now that it's out, I'm feeling drawn more toward speaking to groups, hosting workshops, doing keynotes, things where I can kind of spread the message more broadly and more quickly, and also in ways that are much less natural to me. I consider myself to be an introvert. I don't really like being the center of attention. So it's a little weird to think that I would be volunteering myself to then do this stuff. But I've learned just how important it is to continue to challenge ourselves and to work through the discomfort of being new at something and just not being very good at it. So I think kind of my remix now, I'm in the middle of the remix where I'm still kind of in the discomfort of doing things for the first time and seeing how they go and, kind of cringing a little bit and knowing that in a couple of years, I'm going to look back on this transition and be really impressed with how far I've come, just like I have done with previous kind of evolutions of my career.
I love that so much. Everything is uncomfortable when it's new.
Yep.
And I know speaking, I have a lot of introverted friends like you. And I know public speaking is not the most comfortable thing, but the fact that you're getting out there and really pushing yourself out of that comfort zone and bringing your truth forward is so inspiring to me. So good.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about what really inspired you to make this transformation? I mean, you shared that you were kind of sharing the same thing again and again, and you were feeling a little less maybe excited about it. But what really just said, you know what, Esther, it's time to sit down, write your book, and start getting out and speaking to the world?
Yeah, I think there were kind of two separate pieces to that. The first was when I decided to write the book. As you know, it could be a lengthy process. It was we were coming up on a new year, and I was thinking about my clients setting goals and my own goals, and how I always thought it would be cool to say that I'd written a book, but never really took it seriously. And then just started thinking, what's stopping me? And I realized that it was largely imposter syndrome and feeling like I didn't know what to do or how to say it or what I would say or who would benefit from it. And I just kind of had this realization that there was nothing that I didn't have that other people do. The difference between the books on my shelf and the book in my head was that other people had just decided, I'm going to figure out what it takes. They didn't, they weren't born published authors. They weren't born knowing what they were doing. Most people just, kind of had this vision and said, I want to share this message and I will figure it out. And because I have so much experience coaching other people and being coached myself, one of the first things I did was just reach out to a coach and say, like, well, the fastest way for me to figure this out is to learn from somebody who knows what they're doing. And so that was kind of the first piece of it. Is I wasn't really intending to transition away from coaching at all with the book, and I still am coaching, and I still love working with clients, especially now that it's one piece of what I do, not the entirety of it. But I think what really happened is after the book came out is I had put so much of my knowledge into the book that I just didn't want to keep saying different versions of it, different shortened things on social media. I just felt like if you want to know what to do, how to overcome these struggles that you're having, I put it all for you. It's in this book. Read this book and follow it, and you will succeed. And it just almost felt like I was kind of beating a dead horse at that point. And that's when I started thinking more about what are the messages, what are the lessons that I've learned that I can share that go beyond the weight loss industry that I've been working in. Because what I found is that it's the skills, the lessons, the challenges, like they're also broadly applicable, that what helps you be successful in one area is translatable into other areas. So I realized I don't need to sort of pigeonhole myself into regurgitating these same things over and over again. I can help people make connections beyond that in a way that feels more interesting to me, and then also in a format that allows me to challenge myself and grow personally.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I wish there was a way. So I'm going to say this out loud and see your head nod for just a second, because I think that's going to happen. I wish there was a way to articulate to people that when a coach is an expert in her field and she writes a book, you are getting thousands of dollars of coaching practice in a book that costs you about 20 bucks.
That's so I've honestly never like thought it in those words, but you're absolutely right. It is the culmination of decades of experience, both personal and professional, in a book, and it is so valuable. And I think too, when a coach writes a book, it's not this like dry textbook. It's very actionable, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Is it's more of a guide or a roadmap than just like, here's some statistics or here's some facts or here's some interesting things or here's some stories. It's all of those things with an emphasis on helping you make the change that you want.
Oh my gosh, I so agree. And your book is called To Your Health, correct? I'm trying to
Correct.
make
Yes.
sure I got the most recent one up because I have been reading it. I haven't made it all the way through, but it is a great book. And I love
Thank
that
you.
you have just expanded and you're taking that out into the world because it's so important. And yeah, I just want people to hear, if they didn't hear it yet, when you buy a book like To Your Health, you're getting thousands of dollars of coaching in your hand for about 20-ish dollars. I mean, there's no other way I can emphasize it. I know I went through kind of the same thing with my book, Promotion Ready, in 3 months. I'm like, it's costing clients about $4,500 for that same information that's in the book
Yeah.
with the strategies. So that's why I'm so interested. And I love speaking with other authors, especially when they've come from this great coaching background. Okay. Well, we're going to kind of pop into what was the biggest challenge that you discovered during your remix? And what are some ways that you worked to overcome it?
That's such a good question. Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is having associated my success with my income and the discomfort of, with a combination of, writing the book, transitioning to speaking. Also, my family is, my husband's in the military, so we've had some pretty major moves. I'm the primary parent most of the time, so my attention is spread thin, and I'm no longer as focused on building my business or as quickly as I was before. And I think one of the hardest pieces has been stomaching bringing in less money and feeling like I'm contributing less monetarily to my family. And I am in a very privileged and fortunate position that we don't need my income to live. But that's been really hard mentally is, you get used to a certain lifestyle or a certain income or paycheck and it's nice and even having the belief that you're in sort of a slingshot moment of you're pulling back to spring yourself forward and that same level of financial success is possible and even more. It doesn't feel good to feel like you've moved backwards on kind of the financial ladder. So I think that's a big piece of it. And I would imagine anyone making a career change or dipping their toe in entrepreneurship or ripping the band-aid and doing it big kind of has those same feelings of discomfort of if any piece of my self-worth was tied to my income, I feel really raw and exposed when I don't have that as a measure of success. And I think being able to say things like that out loud is a big part of how I've sort of worked through it. And the same advice that I give clients about noticing your thoughts and fact checking them has been really helpful is not taking the thought you're not as valuable or successful if you're not making X amount of money, not taking it at face value and actually being like, all right, hang on a second. Is that really true? And I'm very fortunate that I have a supportive husband who also reminds me that, hey, you're doing a lot of other stuff. If not for you being available for all of the pickups and drop-offs and the practices and all of that, our life wouldn't work. So that helps. But I think it's just kind of a lot of mental work of anytime those doubts come up or those thoughts come up, just reminding yourself to fact check them and to counter them with something that feels better and is also true.
Wow. That is so powerful and so relevant. One of the things that, I mentioned that earlier with you is that I've transitioned into helping women leave corporate jobs after decades and go into entrepreneurship. And I feel like the disconnect of really realizing how much of our self-worth is tied to our paycheck doesn't really hit until that paycheck is a lot different,
Right.
which is why it's so important to do the mindset work and to remind yourself that you're so much more than a paycheck. But it's hard. I mean, I just early days, right, with coaching, it takes time to build that momentum. It takes time
Mhm.
to get where you want to go. But then when you look back at where am I today compared to where I was 2 years ago? Where am I today compared to where I was 5 years ago? And realize all of the things you've done and all of the impact you've had. And oh my gosh, your son, I mean, he's so blessed to be able to have mom there in the afternoons and hanging out at the games and doing the things. And when you realize he's going to look back one day and recognize the money never really mattered. And that's
Yeah,
the thing to let
that's
come through.
sorry,
No,
that's such
go.
a great point. I hadn't thought of that as I was talking, but that's such a great strategy also, is kind of looking at what other benefits there are to this change, this remix that you're undergoing. Is sure, the numbers might be different, but what are you gaining? Are you gaining, the freedom, the flexibility, the lifestyle, the time back in your day, that you no longer feel like you're answering to a boss, that you get to call your own shots, that you can, go play pickleball on a Wednesday and nobody's gonna, write you up for it. That there's so much other stuff that we gain that helps balance, maybe a financial loss.
Yeah. And tapping back into health. I mean, I know when I left corporate, I think I may have shared this with you when we met early on, but I had been seeing a naturopath for years because I was just so wonky. Like my health was suffering. I was having migraines. I was having all these stress related symptoms that we just, as women, just power through. It's fine. It's just how it's supposed to be. And when I left my job, I'd had testing done just a couple months before. And then every 6 months, she reruns some, hormone levels and that type of thing. That 6 month mark, she ran my tests and she said, "What's changed?" And I said, "I don't know why." And she said, "Well, your hormones have never been so balanced." She's like, every
Wow.
stress hormone, every sex hormone, every hormone is balanced. It hasn't been that way for more than the 10 years that I've been working with you.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, "I quit my job." And she said, "That job was killing you." And I said, "Now I know that." Like,
Right.
now I know that it was so much stress and pressure that I just had compartmentalized and just kept doing what I was supposed to do. But there is always something that you catch that is more important than that financial. And, again, we're in very blessed positions where we have a second income in the home, or I had a job where I was able to squirrel away a bit of a nest egg. So it wasn't as much of a pressure, but I definitely recommend, especially for high performing, high functioning women, that you kind of take a step back and think about, what are the most important things to you, and are you doing the things that matter, so you're not looking back on life with regrets, or, wishing that you had been able to do something different. Oh,
Yeah,
so good.
it's really interesting how if you do ask somebody, their values and what's important to them, most women would probably not say money as, in the top three. They'd say their family and things like that. So it's interesting when you sort of check that against where your time is being spent and your energy is being spent. And I think it can be so freeing to kind of quit the corporate grind and bet on yourself and say, I'm going to start living in a way that actually is a true reflection of my values.
And that financial thing, I mean, it's just one other thing popped into my head, is the things that we maybe don't think about as being tied to financial value. I was a platinum client at White House Black Market until 2020. And when I lost my status, I was like, what? I mean, I used to walk in, the room would be set up, there'd be clothes and a thing and whatever. And, I never
Wow.
really tied that to anything until I stopped leaving my house so much. And I'm like, what do you mean I lost my status? And I just walk in and you say, "Hi, welcome in." That's it.
Right. 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 Don't you know
Oh,
who I am?
okay. So maybe that is something that was tied to that financial, that paycheck side of it, that I didn't even realize was something that
Yeah.
was just so silly that I'm like, why was I doing that?
Right. But it made you feel important and special. And we all want
It
that.
did. It's so wild. All right. So back on to, kind of one of the things with you, you definitely talk about good habits, and I know you've got a lot of great strategies. So what practical habits or strategies do you recommend for Gen X women who are feeling really overwhelmed by the midlife changes and things that are going on?
Yeah. That's one of the number one barriers that I see to better health is overwhelm. We've just been convinced over our lifetimes that it takes this whole laundry list of lifestyle changes in order to be healthy or make a difference. And when we don't feel like we have the bandwidth to do all of those things, we end up doing nothing because it feels like, well, why bother? If I'm not doing A through Z, it's not going to make a difference anyway. So I might as well wait until, whatever, when I can really go all in on it again. And we just have these spurts of doing too much, followed by long periods of not doing enough. And it's really frustrating. So one of the best pieces of advice I can give, and I know, it's not the first time you've heard it, but it's one of those things that like sometimes you need to hear it again for it to finally click, is to give yourself permission to do less. And what I encourage clients to do, and part of the FIT framework that I work clients through, the F is figuring out the big rock habits that will generate the majority of the results toward your goal. And what that does is gives you permission to kind of draw that line in the sand and say, these are the things that are big rocks. These are what matter the most. These are what I'm going to focus on. And anything that is not on this side of the line, I am not going to stress over anymore. It's things like, how many meals should I be eating each day? How, should I be fasting? Should I be worried about net carbs? Do I need to get the organic version of this? Is this better than that? Like all of this minutia that just ends up being noise in our heads is really inconsequential. So when you just hone in on a handful of habits, you're that much more likely to actually do them. And when you do them, you start to figure out the systems and the processes that will make them easy to do on more of like an autopilot. So that then when life does get lifey, which it inevitably will, your habits aren't being, kind of knocked off the plate. You feel like I'm able to continue doing those with relatively little energy expenditure. And in turn, they are helping me then be of sound enough mind and body to navigate the other things going on in my life. So I think that's number one, is do less. Remind yourself that it is okay. You have explicit permission to do less and to focus on what is going to give you the most bang for your buck. And then with that, I think a really helpful kind of tangible tool is some form of consistency tracker. I just print the blank monthly calendar page off of, some free website, and whatever habit it is that I'm working on fostering that month, or 2 or 3 habits, I get some, a sticker or a check mark or a smiley face or whatever, something on the calendar for when I did it. And it gives you a little bit of external accountability of you have that hanging on the fridge and you want to see the marks on it. So you're more likely to do it just because it's top of mind because you have a visual. But then as you zoom out and get some distance from it, if you look at the month as a whole, you're much better able to pick up on patterns that you might not have noticed otherwise. So there's just always this disconnect between our perception and reality. So oftentimes we'll tell ourselves, oh yeah, I'm really good about, taking a walk every day, or I always, have a vegetable at dinner, until you start tracking those things and you realize it's a lot more sporadic than you thought. And then once you have that information, you're then better armed to say, okay, what is it about these days that's making it harder? What is it about these other days that makes it easier? How do I start getting more consistency under my belt? Because the most frustrating thing is that most of us are not in need of a drastic lifestyle overhaul. We know the basics. We're doing our best to do them. And we're just like right under that threshold where we see the payoff. And it's just tweaking that consistency a little bit. It's getting you from, 17, 18, 20 days a month to like that 25, 26 days a month type thing. It's not drastic. And it's not even necessarily that you need to do anything differently. It's just that you need to do that with more focus. So I think those are 2 tips that really help a ton with overwhelm.
I love that. And it's funny, I think about like all of the things that I've done as I've worked with coaches. Coaches always have coaches. It's just how we are.
Yep.
There's always somebody helping us. But I remember I was working with a health coach, and one of the things that overwhelmed me and it made me give up was tracking macros. Macro tracking makes me crazy. And I get we need to get so many grams of protein. I get we need to cut the fat and the carbs and whatever. But I'm like, oh my God, it's so much. But to your point, you can simplify it. It's like, where's the extra stuff sneaking in? So it's a little easier for me to just kind of jot down a couple of things that I ate during the day and kind of stick with, I'm fairly consistent. But I was like, oh, those little mini ice cream cones from Trader Joe's, that's the perfect dessert. Until you eat 3 of them and you're like, oh, shoot, I was eating like 2 or 3 a day. My husband must be eating. No, that was me.
That's exactly it. And I know tracking can be really polarizing. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Some people do it begrudgingly and then feel like they're a slave to it. At the end of the day, it's just a means to develop awareness and to learn. Number one, to learn about exactly that. You know, what blind spots have I had that are keeping me stuck and frustrated? And then number two, to develop awareness about the energy content of foods and the macronutrient breakdown. Once you have some tracking under your belt and you can identify where's a lean protein source here, you know, does this look like about how much I normally have when I was using a food scale? Then you can just, you know, rely on yourself. And I think often we don't have an exit strategy, is people can end up just kind of a slave to the numbers when that was never kind of what it was intended to be in the first place.
Exactly. And then some of us might rebel against those numbers and just be like,
Yes.
nobody cares
Yes.
about
You
macros.
can't tell me. Yeah.
Let's go have nachos. Oh my gosh. I love that. So many great tips and that information, Esther. Tell me a little bit about speaking. Do we have any upcoming events? Is there anywhere that we can see you live?
Yeah. Oh, great question. So I don't know how many listeners you would have in the San Diego area, but I have an event coming up at the Coronado Library. I did one last night at a salon in town here in Coronado, which really interestingly is designated the first community care salon in the country. And it's intended to foster community and connection among people because we know how many people are feeling, you know, disconnected and lonely. So there are monthly events there. And then on a bigger scale, if you happen to be an educator, I'm doing a breakout session at a wellness conference for educators in California. It's at Disneyland. So if you want an excuse to go there and, write it off or something, it's July 7th to 9th in, I guess that's technically Anaheim, but the LA area. And then, you know, one of the things that I need to be doing more is networking and pitching myself. And, I've been learning how, you know, kind of what the lag time is, that it's not like coaching where it's like, you know, we connect somehow, we set up a call, we hit the ground running, you know, a few days later. It's, you got to know the right people to talk to at the right time when they're past the previous event and starting a new event, but haven't yet been bombarded with applications and things like that. So I'm learning about, odds are what I'll be booking next is probably like spring events.
Okay. I love that. I'll have to get down to see you because Coronado is one of my favorite places to visit in California.
You definitely have to come.
Love it down there. So we'll make that happen. I have an event down in Agora Hills in a couple of weeks too. So we'll have to see if maybe we can connect. I don't know how far distance wise. Southern California is like it's kind of I would think it looked like 40 minutes away from my son who lives in Long Beach the last time I was down there. I was like, hey, come up and we'll have breakfast. And he said, oh, yeah, that's not too bad. I was like, how's the drive? And he said, well, right now it shows it's about 50 minutes. And I said, okay, I'm sorry, allergies. And he said, oh, it's about 50 minutes. And I was like, great, then I'll see you in the morning. In the morning, I looked at the drive time for him and it was 2 hours. So I was like, it's breakfast. I'll see you next time.
Never mind. Yeah.
Never mind. But I love that. And to your point, you know, just anywhere that you're speaking, just make sure that you're keeping us in the loop because I'm sure many of my listeners would love to visit if they're in the area. What is the best way for our listeners to connect with you if they are looking for advice and support in their own journeys?
Yeah, feel free to reach out on any of the social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook primarily. My website is Esther Avant, as well as my handle everywhere is just my name. Keep it simple. And then both my book and my podcast are called To Your Health. If you are interested in learning about either of those, the book is available on Amazon is the easiest, but also wherever books are sold.
Excellent. We'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes. Esther, this has been a fabulous conversation. But before we wrap up, is there any last bit of wisdom or advice that you have to share with us?
Yeah, my hope would be that after you've listened to this conversation, you feel inspired and empowered to take some action in your own life. We've covered such a helpful variety of topics from, you know, health related things to career to just kind of the discomfort of growth and learning. And I hope that you'll take some piece of this that resonated with you and you'll take action on it because the information is great, but what really helps you make a transformation is to start implementing the things that strike you.
I love that. I am all about action. So that is the perfect bit of advice. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Gen X Remix, Esther. It was so fun to have you here.
It was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Wow. I hope you were taking notes because Esther dropped so many gems in this episode. Whether it's a reminder to do less, but do it consistently, or her honest take on the identity shift that comes with earning less while growing more. You can't help but be seen by this conversation. Be sure to grab her best-selling book, To Your Health, on Amazon. Check out her podcast of the same name and connect with her on LinkedIn or at esteravant.com. All links will be included in the show notes. And don't forget, if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed or like your next chapter is still a little fuzzy, be sure to join me for the Escape with Confidence, Clarity, Purpose, and Action for Your Bold Next Act workshop. It's a live on Zoom 2-part workshop designed to help you finally stop thinking about your next act and actually start building it. Reserve your spot now. The link is in the show notes, so just pop right on over there before you do anything else today. We want to make sure you get into that next workshop. Until next time, keep showing up, keep remixing, and remember, your bold next act doesn't start someday. It starts the moment you decide you're worth it. Take care, friends.